The metallic gleam of the Arcturian vessel pierced through Earth's atmosphere like a silver arrow, its hull radiating with an otherworldly energy that made the air itself seem to shimmer. Commander Reyna Thorne stood at attention on the landing pad, her dark eyes fixed on the approaching ship. The wind whipped her auburn hair around her face, but she remained still, embodying the discipline that had earned her command of Earth's primary contact facility. The vessel's landing was silent, defying the laws of physics as humans understood them. As the ship's entry ramp descended, Reyna felt the weight of humanity's future pressing down on her shoulders. This wasn't just another diplomatic meeting, it was humanity's first official contact with the Arcturian Empire, a species known across 3 galaxies for their martial prowess. The figure that emerged from the ship seemed to absorb the sunlight rather than reflect it. Koros Val, High Commander of the Arcturian Battle Fleet, stood nearly 8 feet tall, his crystalline armor pulsing with an internal light that matched the rhythm of his heartbeats. His skin had a subtle blue tinge that shifted like oil on water, and his eyes, all 4 of them, gleamed with an intelligence that bordered on predatory. Commander Thorne, his voice resonated at a frequency that made Reyna's bones hum. Your species' reputation for hospitality precedes you. Though I must admit, I expected someone more substantial. Reyna's jaw tightened, but her expression remained neutral. She had been warned about Arcturian arrogance. High Commander Val, Earth welcomes you. I trust your journey through our primitive defense grid was enlightening? A flicker of something, perhaps respect, more likely amusement, crossed Koros's features. The defense grid he had navigated was anything but primitive, and they both knew it. Earth had developed quantum entanglement shields that even the Arcturians hadn't mastered, though Reyna wasn't about to point that out. Your defenses are adequate, Koros conceded, falling into step beside her as they moved toward the facility. Though I fail to see why the Council insists on this alliance. Your species is barely a millennium into space travel. Perhaps, Reyna guided them through the security checkpoint, where advanced scanners disguised as simple archways analyzed every molecule of their visitors. That's exactly why we're valuable. Fresh perspectives often see solutions others miss. Koros made a sound that might have been a laugh. Solutions? Your bodies break under pressure that wouldn't challenge an Arcturian child. Your lives are so brief we measure them in heartbeats. What solutions could you possibly offer? Reyna stopped at the entrance to the conference room, turning to face him. High Commander, do you know why humans became the dominant species on our planet? Not because we were the strongest, or the fastest, or even the most numerous. We survived because we adapted. Because we learned. Because we never, ever accepted our limitations as final. Pretty words, Koros's upper eyes narrowed while his lower ones scanned the facility. But words don't win wars. No, Reyna agreed, pressing her palm to the security scanner. But they can prevent them. Which is why we're both here, isn't it? The conference room doors slid open, revealing a holographic display of the latest Arcturian border conflict. 3-dimensional ships danced in a deadly ballet, energy weapons carving paths through the void. But it was the small, almost invisible distortions in space that caught Koros's attention. What are those anomalies? He demanded, all 4 eyes focused on the subtle warps in the battlefield. Reyna allowed herself a small smile. Those, High Commander, are why your council insisted on this alliance. That's human ingenuity at work. We call them phantom fields, quantum disturbances that can disable even your most advanced weapons without destroying them. Developed by our primitive minds in less than a decade. For the first time since his arrival, Koros Val was silent. He studied the display with an intensity that made the air feel heavy, his crystalline armor pulsing faster with what might have been agitation or excitement. Impossible, he finally said, but there was a note of uncertainty in his resonant voice. Such technology would require an understanding of quantum mechanics that a species as young as ours couldn't possibly possess. Reyna finished. High Commander, you're about to learn something crucial about humans. Telling us something is impossible only makes us try harder to prove it possible." The training facility hummed with energy as Koros Val strode through the reinforced doors, his crystalline armor casting prismatic patterns across the walls. 2 weeks had passed since his arrival, and his disdain for human capabilities had only grown. Commander Thorne followed close behind, her steady footsteps a counterpoint to his resonant movements. "Your combat training methods are inefficient," Koros declared, watching a group of soldiers running combat simulations. "You rely too heavily on technology, on shields and protective gear. It makes you soft." Reyna crossed her arms, observing as her troops navigated the complex scenario. "Would you care to test that theory, High Commander? Our simulation chamber can accommodate your unique capabilities." All 4 of Koros's eyes fixed on her, his mouth curving into what might have been a smile. "Are you challenging me, Commander Thorne?" "I'm offering you an opportunity to prove your assumptions correct," she replied, keeping her voice neutral. "Unless you're concerned about damaging our primitive equipment?" The Arcturian's armor pulsed with barely contained energy. "Very well. Set your parameters, Commander. Let us see what your best can do against natural Arcturian superiority." Reyna tapped her command console, and the simulation chamber cleared. "Lieutenant Rivera," she called out to one of her officers, a compact woman with quick eyes and quicker reflexes. "Would you care to demonstrate our training protocols for our guest?" Rivera stepped forward, her combat suit seeming almost crude next to Koros's crystalline armor. The Arcturian towered over her, his massive frame making her appear almost childlike in comparison. His upper eyes blinked in what might have been disappointment. "This is your champion?" he asked, genuine surprise in his resonant voice. She wouldn't survive 10 seconds in actual combat. Rivera's only response was to take her position in the chamber. Reyna activated the simulation protocols, and the air itself seemed to thicken with potential energy. "Standard rules," Reyna announced. "First to disable their opponent wins. Begin." Koros moved with devastating speed, his crystalline armor amplifying his already formidable strength. But Rivera wasn't where he struck, she had already moved, her movements precise and economical. The Arcturian's attack met empty air. "Stand and fight," he demanded, his armor pulsing with frustrated energy. "Why?" Rivera's voice came from behind him. "Because that's what an Arcturian would do." Koros spun, his arm sweeping out in a blow that could shatter concrete. Again, Rivera wasn't there. The lieutenant's combat suit might have looked primitive, but it incorporated technology that even the Arcturians hadn't mastered, predictive movement algorithms coupled with neural response enhancers. "Your species' obsession with direct confrontation is a weakness," Rivera explained, dodging another powerful but predictable attack. "You're so convinced of your superiority that you never consider there might be better ways to fight." Koros's frustration mounted with each failed strike. His armor began to glow brighter, its energy output increasing as he pushed himself harder. But Rivera remained untouchable, her movements becoming almost hypnotic in their efficiency. "Enough games!" Koros roared, activating his armor's energy pulse, a devastating attack that should have ended the match instantly. But Rivera had been waiting for exactly this moment. As the energy pulse expanded outward, her combat suit's quantum field activated. The pulse didn't just miss her, it curved around her, its path altered by the same phantom field technology that had caught Koros's attention in the first place. Before the Arcturian could process what had happened, Rivera was inside his guard. Her hand pressed against his armor, and suddenly the crystalline structure went dark. Koros stood frozen, his mighty armor transformed into nothing more than an elaborate decoration. "Simulation complete," Reyna announced. "Lieutenant Rivera is the victor." The chamber powered down, and Rivera stepped back, offering a respectful nod to the still frozen Arcturian. "Your armor's systems will reactivate in approximately 30 seconds, High Commander." A safety feature we incorporated into the simulation. Koros remained silent as his armor gradually reactivated, its glow returning slowly. His 4 eyes studied Rivera with an intensity that made the air feel charged with potential violence. "How?" he finally asked, his resonant voice uncharacteristically quiet. "We analyzed your armor's energy patterns from the moment you landed," Reyna explained. Lieutenant Rivera's combat suit was specifically designed to counter its frequencies. "As I told you before, High Commander, humans adapt. We learn. We overcome." "You knew," Koros turned to face her, realization dawning in all 4 eyes. "You planned this demonstration from the beginning." Reyna met his gaze steadily. "You needed to understand. Humanity doesn't just rely on technology, we integrate it, improve it, make it part of ourselves. Our strength isn't in our bodies or our armor. It's in our ability to recognize our weaknesses and turn them into advantages." The Arcturian commander was silent for a long moment, his armor pulsing in a rhythm that suggested deep thought. "Perhaps," he finally said, "the Council's insistence on this alliance wasn't as misguided as I initially believed." The emergency klaxons shattered the pre-dawn silence at Earth's defense facility. Commander Reyna Thorne burst into the command center, her eyes immediately drawn to the massive holographic display showing multiple red warning indicators around the quantum shield generators. "Status report," she demanded, sliding into her command chair as her staff worked frantically at their stations. "Quantum field destabilization across all sectors," Lieutenant Rivera reported, her fingers dancing across her console. "The shields are failing, and we're detecting unusual energy signatures approaching Earth's orbit." "The Nexar," Koros Val's resonant voice carried across the command center as he entered. His crystalline armor pulsed with an urgent rhythm. "They're a species we thought extinct. They feed on quantum energy." Reyna's eyes narrowed. "And you didn't think to mention this before?" "We hadn't encountered them in 3 centuries, Koros replied, moving to study the tactical display. "They were considered a theoretical threat at best. But your phantom fields, they must have drawn them here." The implications hit Reyna like a physical blow. Earth's most advanced defense technology had inadvertently attracted an ancient enemy. "How do we stop them?" "You don't," Koros stated flatly. "The Nexar cannot be reasoned with or defeated through conventional means. They will consume your quantum fields and then move on to your power systems, your technology, until Earth is reduced to a pre-industrial state." "There's always a way," Reyna insisted, turning to her team. "Rivera, what's the status of the prototype quantum inverter?" "Untested and highly unstable, Commander. Dr. Jensen says it could either repel the Nexar or tear a hole in spacetime." Koros's upper eyes widened. "You cannot be considering using an untested weapon. The risk is better than certain defeat," Reyna cut him off. "Your people's strength couldn't stop them. Maybe it's time to try something new." The tactical display showed the Nexar ships entering the upper atmosphere, their forms shifting and writhing like oil on water. Earth's remaining defenses opened fire, but the energy weapons passed harmlessly through the alien vessels. "The quantum inverter would need to be delivered directly to their flagship," Rivera reported. "But our ships can't get close enough without being drained of power." "My armor," Koros suddenly said, his resonant voice thoughtful. "It operates on crystalline energy, not quantum power. I could deliver your device." Reyna shook her head. "The radiation levels would be lethal, even for an Arcturian. We need another way." "No," Koros's armor pulsed with determination. "We don't. Your lieutenant proved that strength isn't just about survival. Sometimes it's about being willing to take necessary risks." The command center fell silent as human and Arcturian locked eyes. In that moment, something shifted between them, a mutual understanding that transcended their biological differences. "I'll go with you," Reyna decided, already moving toward the equipment bay. The inverter needs human biosignatures to activate. We do this together. Commander, Rivera protested, the survival probability isn't relevant, Reyna finished. Humanity didn't get to the stars by playing it safe. High Commander, are you ready to test that Arcturian superiority in a real crisis? Koros's 4 eyes blinked in sequence, and for the first time since his arrival, he made a sound that might have been genuine laughter. Perhaps you humans are teaching me more than I expected. The next 20 minutes were a blur of preparation. The quantum inverter, a device no larger than a human hand, was integrated into Koros's crystalline armor. Reyna donned a specially modified environmental suit that would draw power from the Arcturian's energy field rather than its own systems. The moment we launch, we'll have approximately 3 minutes before the radiation becomes lethal, Reyna briefed her team. Rivera, the moment you detect the inverter's activation, initiate the quantum field reset across all generators. Understood, Commander. Rivera's voice was steady, professional, but her eyes betrayed her concern. Good hunting. Koros extended his massive hand to Reyna. Your species continues to surprise me, Commander Thorne. Shall we show the Nexar what happens when Arcturian strength meets human ingenuity? Reyna took his hand, feeling the alien energy of his armor pulse through her suit. Let's rewrite some history, High Commander. They launched from the facility's highest point, Koros's crystalline armor propelling them through the atmosphere like a comet. Around them, the Nexar ships continued their inexorable approach, their energy-draining fields creating visible distortions in the air. Your suit is holding? Koros asked as they approached the massive flagship. Better than expected, Reyna replied, monitoring her systems. Your crystal energy is actually enhancing its capabilities. Remind me to thank Lieutenant Rivera for that particular innovation. They weren't detected until they were almost on top of the flagship. The Nexar, so focused on consuming Earth's quantum fields, never expected a direct physical assault. By the time they registered the threat, Koros and Reyna had already breached their outer hull. Fascinating, Koros observed as they moved through the alien vessel. Their entire ship appears to be a single organism. Less admiring, more moving, Reyna urged, watching her radiation indicators climbing steadily. We've got less than a minute before things get permanently interesting. They reached what appeared to be the ship's central nucleus just as the first warning alarms began blaring in Reyna's suit. The quantum inverter hummed against Koros's armor, responding to the presence of both human and Arcturian biosignatures. Together, Reyna said, placing her hand over the device. Koros's massive hand covered hers, and for a moment, human and Arcturian energy signatures merged into something entirely new. The quantum inverter activated, and the world turned inside out. Consciousness returned to Reyna in waves of sharp, pulsing pain. The medical bay's soft lighting felt like needles in her eyes, and every breath seemed to require conscious effort. But she was alive, which, given the circumstances, was more than she'd expected. The mighty human awakens. Koros's resonant voice came from somewhere to her left, its usual tone tempered by what might have been concern. Your doctors were beginning to worry. Reyna turned her head slowly, finding the Arcturian commander seated beside her bed. His crystalline armor was dulled, its usual brilliant gleam reduced to a soft glow, and fresh scarring marked its surface. But his 4 eyes were alert, watching her with an intensity that seemed different from his previous scrutiny. The Nexar, she managed to ask, her throat raw. Eliminated, Koros confirmed. Your quantum inverter didn't just repel them, it reversed their energy consumption ability. They essentially devoured themselves. He paused, his armor pulsing in an unfamiliar rhythm. An elegant solution. Brutal, but elegant. How long was I out? 3 days. Your Lieutenant Rivera has been running the facility with remarkable efficiency. She also made several modifications to my armor while I was unconscious, modifications I'm not entirely certain I approved of. Reyna attempted to smile, though it felt more like a grimace. That's Rivera. Always improving things, whether they want to be improved or not. She tried to sit up, but her body refused to cooperate. The radiation damage? Extensive, for both of us. Though your doctors tell me you took the worst of it. My armor protected me from the lethal effects, but you. He trailed off, his upper eyes narrowing while his lower one seemed to soften. You knew the suit wouldn't fully shield you, didn't you? We needed your strength to get there and my biosignature to activate the device. The math was simple. Simple? Korosa's armor flared briefly with agitation. You deliberately exposed yourself to lethal radiation levels. That's not strength, Commander. That's dash. Exactly what you were planning to do, Reyna interrupted. Before I insisted on coming along. You were ready to sacrifice yourself to save a planet of beings you considered inferior just days ago. Why? The Arcturian was silent for a long moment, his armor's pulsing slowing to a thoughtful rhythm. Because it was necessary. Because. He seemed to struggle with the words. Because your people had proven yourselves worthy of such a sacrifice. And you proved yourself worthy of our trust, Reyna said softly. When the Nexar appeared, you could have retreated to your ship, reported back to your people. Instead, you chose to fight alongside us. Your courage is infectious, Koros admitted. Though I'm still not certain if that's a strength or a weakness. He reached out, his massive hand hovering over the medical equipment monitoring her vital signs. Your bodies are so fragile, yet you throw yourselves into danger as if you were made of crystal and steel. We're fragile because we have to be, Reyna explained, finally managing to push herself into a sitting position. Our weakness forces us to think, to innovate, to find solutions beyond brute force. And sometimes, yes, it means we have to risk everything on uncertain chances. Like combining Arcturian crystal energy with human quantum technology? Korosa's upper eyes gleamed with what might have been amusement. The scientists are still trying to understand exactly what happened when we activated the inverter together. It seems our energies created something entirely new. Speaking of which, Reyna gestured to his armor, what modifications did Rivera make while you were out? She integrated some of your phantom field technology into the crystal matrix. Apparently, she got the idea after seeing how our energies combined during the mission. It's surprisingly effective. He stood, his massive frame casting shadows across her bed. Your people never stop trying to improve things, do you? Not as long as we're breathing, Reyna agreed. It's how we survive. How we grow. How you thrive, Koros corrected. I'm beginning to understand why the Council insisted on this alliance. My people have grown complacent in our strength, relying on what we know works rather than exploring what might work better. His armor pulsed with a new pattern, one that seemed to match the rhythm of the medical equipment monitoring Reyna's heartbeat. Perhaps we need your weakness as much as you need our strength. Not weakness, Reyna said firmly. Adaptability. The willingness to change, to take risks, to trust in something beyond physical power. She met his gaze steadily. When we were in that ship, facing what should have been certain death, did you trust me? Yes, Koros answered without hesitation, then seemed surprised by his own certainty. Despite every logical argument against it, I trusted you completely. And I trusted you, despite your earlier dismissal of humanity's worth. That's real strength, High Commander. The ability to move past prejudice and preconception, to form bonds that transcend biological differences. Bonds, Koros repeated the word as if testing its weight. My people don't speak of such things. We believe in alliance through power, cooperation through mutual benefit. And now? The Arcturian's armor shifted, its glow brightening slightly. Now I find myself wondering if there are forms of power we haven't considered. If perhaps the ability to trust, to adapt, to risk everything for others, if these things aren't their own kind of strength. 1 month after the Nexar incident, Earth's defense facility hummed with a new kind of energy. Human and Arcturian technology had begun to merge in ways neither species had imagined possible. Lieutenant Rivera's modifications to Koros's armor had sparked a wave of innovation, with engineers from both worlds working to combine crystal energy and quantum fields into something entirely new. Reyna stood at the observation deck, watching a group of human soldiers training alongside Arcturian warriors. The differences in their physical capabilities were still stark, but they had learned to use them to their advantage. Human agility and adaptability complemented Arcturian strength and endurance in ways that made both more effective. "Your recovery is complete?" Koros's resonant voice came from behind her. His armor, now streaked with the iridescent patterns of integrated quantum technology, pulsed in sync with the facility's power grid. "According to the doctors, I'm as good as new." Reyna turned to face him. "Though they're still trying to understand why the radiation exposure didn't kill me outright." "Perhaps." Koros moved to stand beside her, all 4 eyes watching the training below. "It had something to do with the energy merger when we activated the inverter. Rivera's tests show that my armor's crystal matrix somehow imprinted with your biological signature during the event." "Is that why you've allowed her to keep modifying it?" "Partly," he admitted. "Though I find myself increasingly curious about what other improvements your people might devise. It's unsettling." Reyna smiled. "Being curious about change?" "Finding myself eager for it," Koros corrected. "The Council has received my reports about the Nexar incident. They're intrigued by the possibilities this alliance presents." "You mean they're shocked that their strongest warrior now advocates for cooperation with primitive humans?" "They're learning, as I have, that true strength takes many forms." His armor shifted, displaying new patterns that seemed almost contemplative. "Watch." Below them, an Arcturian warrior was demonstrating a traditional combat form, his movements powerful and precise. A human soldier observed, then began to mirror the movements, but with subtle alterations. Where the Arcturian used brute force, the human found ways to redirect energy. Where crystalline armor provided protection, human ingenuity found gaps and weaknesses. "A month ago, I would have seen that as mockery," Koros observed. "Now I recognize it as evolution. Your people don't just adapt, you transform everything you touch." "Including seemingly immovable Arcturian commanders?" Reyna asked, a hint of teasing in her voice. "Especially those." Koros's resonant tone carried what might have been warmth. "The Council has approved the expansion of our alliance. They want to establish permanent exchange programs, combining our training methods and technologies." "And what do you want, High Commander?" Koros was silent for a moment, his armor pulsing in that now familiar rhythm that matched human heartbeats. "I want to understand more. About how weakness can become strength. About why your people face impossible odds with hope instead of resignation. About..." He hesitated, "about how you've changed how I see everything I thought I knew." "That's the thing about humans," Reyna said softly. "We're never satisfied with what is. We're always reaching for what could be. Even if it seems impossible. Especially if it seems impossible. Like befriending an arrogant Arcturian who dismissed your entire species. Like showing that Arcturian that strength isn't just about power." She turned to face him fully. The Nexar weren't defeated by physical might or advanced technology alone. They were defeated because 2 different species, 2 different philosophies, found a way to work together. To trust each other. To become something greater than either could be alone. Below them, the training session had evolved into something new. Humans and Arcturians were now working in pairs, each compensating for the other's limitations, each enhancing the other's strengths. It was beautiful, in its way, a dance of power and adaptability, of tradition and innovation. "I've requested permanent assignment to Earth," Koros said suddenly. "As the official Arcturian liaison to your defense forces." Reyna raised an eyebrow. Missing our primitive technology already? Missing the challenge, he corrected. My people have always believed that strength comes from within. You've shown me that sometimes it comes from what we're willing to learn from others. His armor brightened. Besides, Lieutenant Rivera has several more modifications she wants to test, and I've learned it's easier to simply cooperate. Wise decision, Reyna laughed. She'd find a way to modify your armor in your sleep otherwise. A comfortable silence fell between them as they watched the continued training below. Human and Arcturian, once separated by prejudice and pride, now moving in harmony. It was more than an alliance, it was a glimpse of what both species could become together. You know, Reyna said thoughtfully, a year ago, if someone had told me I'd be standing here with an Arcturian commander, planning joint training programs and sharing technology, I'd have thought they were crazy. And if someone had told me I would consider a human a true equal, I would have had them tested for mental degradation, Koros agreed. Perhaps that's the greatest strength your people possess, the ability to make the impossible seem inevitable, given enough time and trust. Not just our strength anymore, Reyna pointed out. It's something we share now. Something we build together. Koros's armor pulsed with acknowledgement, its patterns now a perfect blend of crystalline power and quantum innovation. Together, he agreed. That word has taken on new meaning since I arrived here. That's what humans do, Reyna smiled. We redefine things. Even strength. Especially strength. And as they stood there, watching their people train together, both knew that this was just the beginning. The true test of their alliance, of their shared strength, lay in what they would build together, in the impossible things they would make possible, in the barriers they would break not through force, but through understanding.